The sixth console generation, that of the PS2, Xbox, Dreamcast, and GameCube, more or less coincided with WWE's Ruthless aggression era. The likes of The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin had started to make room for hard-hitting newcomers like Randy Orton and John Cena, and the future was looking bright for wrestling fans and gamers alike. In this video, we're looking at the greatest wrestling games to have been released during this period, using Metacritic's overall critic scores to decide the rankings and user scores to settle any ties. No double countouts or DQ finishes here, we've booked a decisive winner every time. As you'll see, one of the four consoles will be the John Cena-esque star of the show, but the others will make strong appearances too. Well, apart from the Dreamcast, as none of its titles did well enough with the critics to be included. When it comes to 6th gen wrestling games, think of the Dreamcast as more of a Johnny Stamboli than a Brock Lesnar. Does that make sense? With all of that said, let's get this wrestling video game battle royal underway. Who will be the last one standing? I'm the ruthlessly aggressive Ben from TripleJump, and here are the 10 best reviewed wrestling games on PS2, Xbox, Dreamcast, and GameCube. Number 10. WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2009. PS2, 78%. We begin our delve into the halls of legendary grappling games with the most recent title on the list. Released in November of 2008, WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2009 was the first entry into the series to give fans the opportunity to create their own finishing move, and the second to feature the ECW brand. It also boasted improved loading times and licensed music from the likes of Disturbed. Aside from all of these bells and whistles, wrestling fans could enjoy that fast-paced gameplay that developers Ukes had spent the last 10 years mastering. However, words like stale did start to pop up in reviews, and some collision detection and sound design issues were also pointed out. Still, none of this was enough to stop players from lapping up another fun entry into a long-running series, and Ukes did try to add some innovations here and there. One such addition was the Road to WrestleMania mode. In it, players could play through stories that focused on a particular WWE superstar like a John Cena or a Chris Jericho. These stories would end in eventual glory on the grandest stage of them all, and there was presumably a lot of sign pointing along the way, even if most of it might have happened off screen. Can't beat a good sign point. Number 9. Fire Pro Wrestling returns. PS2, 78%. Also coming in at 78%, but beating out its WWE-backed contemporary in the user score stakes, is Spike-developed 2D grapple 'em up Fire Pro Wrestling Returns. Looking very different from the rest of the games on our list, Fire Pro Wrestling Returns takes its cues from the 16-bit wrestling games of yore. This long-running series presented our favorite sport on an isometrically viewed ring, with expressive 2D characters battling it out within. Released in Japan in 2005 and making it to North America in 2007, Fire Pro Wrestling Returns featured an absolutely huge roster with many close approximations of wrestling stars recognized in the West. Dynamic Kid and Giant Rosmov are a couple of our favorites, but there are loads of lawsuit-dodging gems in there. While it didn't have the brand recognition of its WWE licensed counterparts over here in the West, Fire Pro Wrestling Returns did provide players with tons of gameplay and customization options, well-balanced timing-based gameplay, and a retro style that would take players right back to those colorful 16-bit glory days. It also features the exploding barbed wire deathmatch, and if you've been following wrestling in recent years, you'll know that they always go off without a hitch. Number 8. WWE Day of Reckoning. GameCube, 79%. Featuring a control system inspired by highly regarded N64 titles such as WCW NWO Revenge, WWE Day of Reckoning was something of a return to form for wrestling games on Nintendo consoles. Previous GameCube grapplers hadn't exactly set the pro wrestling community ablaze, and Nintendo looked to their Aki-developed past to right the ship. It was mostly successful, with reviewers pointing out greatly improved graphics and an enjoyable story mode. In said story mode, players create a superstar and then set off on their journey to the top of the card, starting off in WWE's developmental system and working up to a main event at WrestleMania. The story mode provided hours of content and gave players the opportunity to choose between the Raw or SmackDown brand partway through. One would see you teaming up with Triple H's Evolution faction, while in another you'd become a member of Undertaker's new ministry. Guaranteed eventual sledgehammer-based betrayal, or strong possibility of being sacrificed or buried alive? Tough choice. The game received a sequel, WWE Day of Reckoning 2, which reviewed slightly worse but had a very interesting story mode in which the WWE Championship belt gets stolen and the player character becomes romantically involved with Stacy Keibler, a definite selling point for young WWE fans at the time. Number 7. WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. PS2, 80%. We finally reached the 80% and above bracket, and It's another entry into the WWE SmackDown vs. Raw series. SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 released in 2006 and brought some innovations to the table, including an analog control system and the ability to fight in the arena crowd area. Said analog control system allowed for more realistic gameplay, where players could grapple opponents and throw them in any direction they wished instead of setting off preset animations as in previous games. The ability to fight in the crowd obviously allowed fights to spill out of the ring, though the audience soon got out of your way, as you would if a 6'5" buff, sweaty man came flying towards you. It was also the first in the series to appear on a next-generation console, with an Xbox 360 version releasing at the same time as its PS2 counterpart. You might think that this marked the end of an era, but such was the PS2's popularity that the series would keep popping up on the venerable system until 2010 with SmackDown vs. Raw 2011. That didn't make this list though, as it doesn't have enough professional reviews to qualify. I suppose the world really did move on after all. Number 6. WWE SmackDown vs. Raw. PS2, 80%. WWE SmackDown vs. Raw marks the start of a years-long series of SmackDown vs. Raw video games that ended when the series rebranded to 12 and 13 in 2011. Though similar to the previous Yuke's-developed WWE games for PS2, this rebranded title added a glut of new features on top of the usual gameplay tweaks and graphical advances. As well as being the first game in the series to feature limited online play, adopters could also look forward to creating and defending their own championships, unlocking arenas and attires by replaying memorable matches from WWE's past, and even filling up a clean or dirty meter depending on whether their grappler was a fully fledged babyface or an underhanded, sneaky heel. WWE SmackDown vs. Raw also added mini-games which could pop up during or before matches and generally involved a timed button pressing mechanic. Stare-downs or shoving contests might occur prior to matches, and brutal chop fights might erupt during them. Well, men's matches that is. Women, or divas as they were known then, might have their bras and panties matches interrupt by an impromptu spanking contest instead. Yes, WWE really was like that. Number 5. Def Jam Vendetta. GameCube, 81%. We're taking a break from Vince's sweaty empire now as we enter into the violent and unusual world of hip-hop wrestling. Def Jam Vendetta was released on the PS2 and GameCube in 2003, with the GameCube version coming in at just one review point higher than its Sony counterpart. While the GameCube's WWE Day of Reckoning was inspired by Aki's much-loved N64 wrestling games, Def Jam Vendetta was actually developed by Aki alongside the team at EA Canada. Published by EA, it was their first attempt at a wrestling game since the shockingly bad and universally panned PS1 title WCW Backstage Assault, and what a return to form it was. Featuring various hip-hop artists associated with the Def Jam record label, Def Jam Vendetta allowed players to step into the expensive shoes of the likes of Ludacris and Method Man and vie for underground hip-hop wrestling dominance. Boasting an old-school but enjoyable grappling style, great graphics and a stylish underground feel, Def Jam Vendetta was a surprising hit that pleased wrestling fans and rap enthusiasts alike. It also paved the way for a hip-hopping sequel that you might see a bit later if you're lucky. Number 4. WWE SmackDown Shut Your Mouth. PS2, 82%. I'm sorry viewers, I'm not trying to sound rude, but our next title is called SmackDown Shut Your Mouth. Released for the PS2 in 2002, this impolitely subtitled wrestling game is the fourth in the WWE SmackDown series and continued to expand on its predecessors by offering various match types and a meaty season mode to sink your mandible claws into. In this season mode, players would be drafted to either SmackDown or Raw, or if they created a wrestler or chose an existing wrestler whose star rating wasn't high enough for the main shows, they would start out on Sunday Night Heat. As with most other wrestling game career modes, the aim was to claim the WWE title on the grandest stage of them all. WWE SmackDown Shut Your Mouth also represented a big step forward in graphical quality for the series, with the wrestlers gaining more realistic facial textures, such that many of them actually looked like the real thing if you squinted a bit. Yuke's also did a lot of work on wrestler entrances, with official music and detailed animation and presentation working together to portray that big match atmosphere. After all, what's a wrestler without some badass music and a sweet Titantron video? Nothing, that's what. Number 3. WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2006. PS2, 84%. Honestly, I feel like I've said SmackDown in this video more times than Dwayne Johnson did throughout his entire wrestling career. I mean, I enjoy talking about great wrestling games, but I think I'm gonna have to layeth downeth after this. Anyway, WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 is the last game on our list to feature the SmackDown vs. Raw branding. Released in 2005, the game introduced a new momentum bar to the violent proceedings, as well as an optional stamina stat which would affect how tired wrestlers would get during matches. Another debutant was the hardcore attribute, which dictated how much damage a wrestler would do when fighting with weapons. Featuring all these tweaks and more, as well as vastly improving on the graphics of its predecessors, WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 was yet another triumphant entry into Yuke's series of PS2 wrestling games. They also added the Buried Alive match, in which wrestlers had to batter each other senseless until one of them was unceremoniously stuffed into a casket. The game would then play a cutscene in which the casket was getting buried with the exhausted athlete trapped inside. Yes, wrestling is a bit weird. Why do you ask? Number 2. Def Jam Fight for NY, Xbox, 84%. Sneaking into second place thanks to its Metacritic user score is expletive-filled brawler Def Jam Fight for NY. This sequel to Def Jam Vendetta made it to the Xbox as well as the PS2 and GameCube, and it was the version for Microsoft's debut console that absorbed the most plaudits. Def Jam Fight for NY picked up the story where the previous game left off and added several new rappers and hip-hop stars to the mix. Snoop Dogg and Exhibit, for example, are both included this time around. The game also adds several fighting styles such as kickboxing and martial arts, which actually steer it away from the wrestling roots of its predecessor. We're still counting it as a wrestling game though, mainly to maintain a bit of variety at the top of the list. Interestingly, while the GameCube version of Def Jam Vendetta was the go-to, Nintendo fans were a bit let down by this hip-hop sequel. The GameCube edition of Def Jam Fight for NY had a slight graphical downgrade and was also missing 8 songs from its soundtrack. I don't know about you, but when I'm battling my fellow rappers in the streets and alleyways of NY, I need a variety of appropriate tunes to back me up. Number 1. WWE SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, PS2, 85%. Prepare yourselves, viewers, because here comes the pain. Also, here comes the best wrestling game of the 6th console generation, and surely one of the greatest of all time. I know it's one of my favorite games ever, full stop. WWE SmackDown Here Comes the Pain was released in 2003 and was the last solely SmackDown branded title in the series before subsequent games started taking on the SmackDown vs. Raw moniker. The trademark fast-paced gameplay returned and was bolstered by a more extensive grappling system. Also, WWE legends were added to the roster for the first time, with icons like Roddy Piper and Ted DiBiase mixing in with newcomers like John Cena and Big Dave Bautista. What earns WWE SmackDown Here Comes the Pain its place at the top of the pile, though? Well, this particular entry into Yuke's WWE series didn't bring huge innovations to the Spanish announce table. It expertly refined everything that was already there. Hugely improved graphics, top-notch presentation, a fascinating career mode, and tons of options and modes to mess around with, all combined to keep wrestling fans sports entertained for hours upon hours. Well, it was that or Brock Lesnar being the cover star intimidated reviewers into giving it a good score. Either way, we think it thoroughly deserves its place as the 6th console generation's undisputed champion. Ring the bell, this one is over.